Alrighty, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Happy Halloween. How y'all doing? My name is Everett DeLorme, and this is episode 4 of the Volleyball Journal. It is Friday, October 31st, and now I do not have a costume. I make sure my camera's up there. I don't have a costume for today. I don't have a costume for tonight, so I just decided to throw on this nice little Brazil jersey that I have here. It is authentic, no numbers or anything, but you know, a nice little gift from my guy Caio. Shout out Caio, from when I was down in Brazil. Basically, I was there for I was in Rio this time last year, I'm pretty sure, or on my way to Rio on the 31st. So yeah, bit of a memory from me being in Rio last year. As I said in my last episode, I was kind of thinking about doing these more frequently because it is so much information when we're trying to cover everything from the world of volleyball over the course of the past week with all the different leagues that we need to cover. That, you know what, just me talking for 2 hours, I don't know how interesting that is. So it's easier for me, and I can break things down a little bit more when I, do these a little bit more frequently. I can get into matches a little bit deeper, and you know what, I don't have to go through 2 match days sometimes and 2 matches for teams. So I basically wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we had a really big matchup with Lube and Trento earlier this week, a rematch of the Scudetto finals from last year. And then also there was the Club World Championship teams that were announced a little bit earlier this week that I didn't really have a chance to talk about not last week's episode. I guess it was earlier this week on Monday, right? Last one we did was the 27th. Now it's the 31st. That makes sense, right? That makes sense. So yeah, I think it's bringing this with a little bit more frequency is going to be easier. I think once we get into European season with Champions League and whatnot, then we'll start moving into a bit of a different situation. And I might just do one show for Champions League and other European competitions, and then another show for what is happening in the various pro leagues. So I don't know, maybe Monday, Friday is a good kind of timeline to do this on. You guys let me know. You guys let me know how you feel about all of that. All right. Oh, we need a little bit of better light here. It is not pointed at me. There we go. That's better. Now we're looking better. So without further ado, let's get into what has been happening in the world of volleyball over the course of the past few days. And I think first and foremost, we have to talk about one very sad and unfortunate story that we're getting out of Qatar, where Iranian national team member Saber Kazemi has lost his life. It sounds like he is still... Well, he is on bright life support, but he is now been declared brain dead. Unfortunately, the 26-year-old suffered a heart attack after going for a post-training swim in Qatar while he was playing for Al Rayyan. And it sounds like he was electrocuted when he jumped into the pool, or when he was in the pool at some point. I'm not entirely sure of the details, but regardless, we send our hearts out to his family, his friends, the Iranian Federation, all of his teammates, past and present. Of course, Al Rayyan, we'll be talking about them a little bit later on in the show when, in context of the Club World Championships. But it's always tough when you see someone from our volleyball family internationally suffer a loss like this. And so we just want to send our hearts out to all of our Iranian fans out there, because that sucks. And I'm sure all of us know what it's like to lose like a family member or a friend, and we want to be thinking about them at this time. All right. So yeah, to wrap things up sorry, I was a little disrespectful there as I was speaking, and we didn't have his picture on the screen, but once again, our hearts go out to Kazemi. He was actually the MVP of the 2021 AVC Championship for Iran. A nice young star, gone at 26 years old, far too young. All right, well, past that unpleasantness, next we have to talk about what was a pretty exciting day, I would say, of the third day of the Lega Volley in Italy. And now, unfortunately, most of us missed it. Unfortunately, most of us were not able to watch the majority of these matches as Volleyball TV, VBTV, was down for most of us. It was talked about continuously in the chat on Wednesday. It was very unfortunate as we had a full slate of matches for both the Lega Volley and the Lega Volley Femminile, a bunch of matches as well for the PlusLiga, and we didn't really get to watch them. It was a little frustrating. Of course, if you can't find those links, or if volleyball World TV is down, is what is always our number one suggestion to, do. Like, we should support volleyball and those things. But if you can't find them, or if they're down, come join us on the Volleyball Source Discord. We'll always be able to help you out, because it was funny that, we couldn't watch the English stream on VBTV, yet Chinese illegal sites had it up. So thank you to QQ. Big shout out to whoever runs that site. So day 3 did have a few notable matches in it. Most importantly, the rematch of last year's Scudetto final between Lube and Trentino. And I actually think that we learnt quite a bit. Sorry, I apologize. We learned quite a bit from watching this match. I thought it was a really entertaining match. I thought it was a very entertaining match. And for me, there was a few things that were very, very clear when it came up to this match. Now, first and foremost, I think we are coming into maybe a new age of two very distinct superstars in this league. Two guys who are, maybe even three, we'll talk about a third in just a little bit, but two guys who are really at the top of their game right now. And if it wasn't apparent from the World Championships a little bit earlier this year, it has to be Alessandro Micheletto and Moni Nikolov. It was an absolute slugfest between these two stars. It was so much fun to watch. It was a back and forth match. Ultimately, it ended up being a 3-1 win for Lube, which is a really big bounce back match for them after they lost 3-2 to Perugia just this past weekend. So man, Lube getting the short end of the stick a little bit, going 1-2 within a week's time. Perugia and Trentino coming out of it on the other side 1-1. Not too bad at all. 1-1 with 4 points. Not bad at all. First set was 25-23 for Lube, then 25-23 for Trentino, 25-22 for 25-23, 25-23 both for Lube. Then Trentino won the third 25-22, and then Lube bounced back and won the fourth 25-22. And I will say right now that I think that Lube really controlled the pace of play in this one. They really controlled the match from the get-go with their serving. And I don't think it's a stretch or a pop or a hot take at all to call Lube the best serving team in the Lega Volley, and quite possibly the best serving team in the world. This is a team that brings so much heat from server to server that it's really difficult to handle them. It is really difficult to handle Lube, and that's kind of what we saw in this match against Trentino. And on the other side of it, it was just an absolute slugfest between Micheletto and Nikolov. Now, Micheletto was outstanding. He had 22 points. He was 17 for 23 with a 59% efficiency. He had 2 blocks and 3 aces. Nikolov, 29 points, a little bit more volume, 24 for 41 with a 56% efficiency. Both of these guys, between the two of them, they made 2 errors offensively, which is just ridiculous, and you absolutely love to see it. Just good volleyball all around. Nikolov also had a block and 4 aces. I mean, it's very clear to me that Micheletto is still quite the complete player, especially with that efficiency that he had in this match. It was very, very good. Like, he is so deadly. And the reality is that he's not getting the same looks that Nikolov is, although Nikolov, I do think, is maybe a little bit better out of system than he is in system for some reasons. But Micheletto, his passing is so strong. I think Nikolov only had like a few targets this entire match. Yeah, he only had 5 targets this entire match. They do a lot of good job hiding him. The new serving rules, I mean, both teams were really employing it that whenever either of those guys are passing in 6, as soon as that ball is tossed, they're switching with the libero and they're going into the one side when they're in the back row, mostly to be able to release them for that pipe ball. And but Micheletto is out there passing balls. His blocking is a little bit stronger than Nikolov's, and his ability to serve aces after 20 is incredible. I mean, the whole reason that they won that third set is really because they stuck with Lube. Their passing was a little bit better early on. They were able to keep with them early on. They weren't playing catch up. And then Micheletto went back and absolutely dominated from the baseline to be able to put them ahead. But ultimately, to me, there's a few things that were very clear when watching how these two teams play, because they're very contrasting styles. Trentino plays like what I would consider as a very Italian style, right? Very similar to the Italian national team. They just execute at a really high level. They've got some good scorers everywhere, and they just execute at a really high level. They're not running the fastest offense. They're really centering their offense around Micheletto. But the issue for Trentino in this one specifically was A, passing, and B, that P2 position. And I don't think Ramon was terrible offensively. He wasn't great. He was 7 for 18. But for me, it was really in the passing. I mean, if you're watching on the screen here, you'll see Jordi Ramon on 17 targets, only 18% positive. And also, I do want to make just a quick side note, is that I don't think I'm going to be talking about perfect passing numbers all that much anymore. Mostly because I got a little note, always appreciated, from none other than Eric Shoji, who apparently has been listening. So Eric, appreciate you. And he was just letting me know that in terms of him and teams, they don't really look at perfect passing numbers. They mostly look at positive passing numbers. So I think, the perfect passing is like right on the head, right on the money. But the reality is that any setter with their worth playing professionally should be able to run a full offense, 2 to 2.5 meters off the net. And that's kind of what he was saying. So once you're in that positive range, once you're around the 3-meter line, around that attack line, then your statisticians are going to start giving it into the negative. But anything, high enough within 2 to 2.5 meters of the setter in front of them in a decent spot is going to be positive, and that's what they can run an offense from. So we're going to mostly focus on from now on is that positive number. But yeah, Jordi Ramon, only 18% positive, and it was very clear that all game long, Lube was just going for that seam between Ramon and Lorenzano. They were just serving that seam, putting on so much pressure, not really letting Micheletto get into any type of rhythm. Especially since, the big reason that Lube is so good at serving is that they take off that heat or they add so much heat to it, and they're not really like a short serving team, right? If you wanted to be able to take Micheletto out of the play, you would serve it short, which in any case, with the way they're running it, it's probably just going to be taken by Lorenzano anyways. So it's way better just to go after Jordi Ramon. And now that was the big question for this Trentino team coming in, is could Ramon be good enough to play alongside Micheletto? He was always viewed as kind of being that third guy off the bench, but of course Lavia got injured. We saw a picture of Lavia earlier this week posted on social media, and he still has those fingers taped up. So I'm not entirely sure if there is a timeline for return for Lavia, maybe at all this season. I know it's a long season, but we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be a struggle for Trentino, I think, especially with the way that their gameplay is. They're so strong down the middle with Flavio, and I thought Simon Torvi coming in this match really did a good job. I really think he has to be the guy in the long term over Bella Bartha. But they just really couldn't get anything going offensively because they weren't in system. And it's not just the aces that Lube is scoring, as you're seeing out there. They had 8 aces to 26 errors, which is maybe not the best ratio that you're going to see, but the amount of pressure that they're putting on consistently. Trentino, only 30% positive in this match, right? So that's less than a third of the time that they are in system. And then they just go to a high ball offense from that. And, Teofort is getting his looks and getting some swings. He was 13 for 31. Not the best efficiency either, but he's swinging on a lot of out-of-system balls. And Lube even though they're not out there getting a lot of blocks, they are still a pretty good blocking team. They're very active, and as soon as you take away that middle, right? Once the passing is good, and that's exactly what we saw at the beginning of the third set, is once that passing is good and you have Flavio and Torvi activated, then Trentino becomes a lot more deadly, right? Because then you have some decisions to make in terms of the block. But otherwise, it is really, really difficult to slow down that Lube serving. And on the other side of things, they run such a fast offense. And they're really moving it around, right? All three of their outside options like hitting a fast ball. All three of their outside options, have decent ball control. And, they like both teams are centering their offenses around one left side attacker. But I think Boniface, the big difference between the game on the weekend against Perugia and the game today on Wednesday against Trentino is how Boniface played and how he ran that offense. That offense was a little sloppy against Perugia, and how good of a blocking team Perugia is. I mean, they're called the Block Devils for a reason. They're going to get you, right? They are going to get you. And that's kind of what we saw in this game. He cleaned it up so much better. And the way he runs that offense, it just keeps other opposing teams' middles just absolutely on skates. I think that everyone else on this roster is, you pretty much expect, like, I'm sure they're going to have bad games here and there. But I think that, of everyone on this roster, he is the biggest question mark. No doubt about it. And when he shows up like the way that he did today, and there's even some people in the Discord who were saying that, this isn't quite the Boniface that we've seen just yet. Like, this isn't playoff mode Boniface. I don't necessarily agree. I thought he set a very, very good match. I did watch it back yesterday on Volleymetrics just to get that baseline view to actually see what's happening. I'm not going to harp on it. Just like it's almost impossible to watch volleyball from a sideline and actually understand what's happening in terms of how the offense is being run and the gaps that they're trying to see and all of these things. But when Boniface is precise, this team is very, very deadly. Very, very deadly. His decision making and his awareness and his feel for the game and his overall vision is so, so good. So when he is out there, and I mean, of course, he comes from a volleyball family. His father's coaching in the league, right? Or has coached in the league. Is coaching in the league. And it's just all about his execution, right? His location is a little bit off. And that's what makes Lube so deadly, their ability just to spread that ball. And past Boniface, I think the real unsung hero in this match, and I mean, I heard that some Italian media people or TV people were giving Lepke a better grade for this match than Bottolo. And you guys know how I feel about Eric Lepke. This is a guy that I've known since he was a kid. I've watched him grow as an athlete and as a person, and I couldn't be more proud of him. But there's no way that you can tell me that Lepke is more important than Bottolo right now on this team. And if you look at how this team stacks up on serve receive, there's a lot of rotation where they essentially have a two-man serve receive between Bottolo and Balasso just taking up the majority of the court. And Nikolov and Lepke are kind of put off to the side a little bit. So Bottolo, to me, is such an important linchpin on this team. And I really bet that Trentino is looking at Bottolo in the way he plays in that P2 position, the way he passes, the way he serves, the way he comes up clutch in out-of-system situation. They really think that, I bet you Trentino would love to have Bottolo. Like, if Trentino had Bottolo, that would be next level. And I think moving forward, it's going to be a very, very difficult decision for Di Giorgi to make between Bottolo and Lavia, especially the way that Bottolo is passing the ball right now. And if you look at his numbers from this one on 29 targets, and they are really going after him, 55% positive, 38% perfect. That 38% perfect is just to really put home of how precise he's being in serve receive. And it's not like Trentino's a bad serving team either. You still have Micheletto, you still have Foch, you still have Simon Torvi, who's a good server. Flavio is real tricky with that float serve as well too. So it's just Bottolo is really, really doing a good job. Balasso as well. I really wish we had dig numbers. To me, especially watching like the 22% positive from Balasso on 18 targets, it's really because, you know, he switches into that sixth position for serve receive. And when you're beating the serve, when you're Teofol or Micheletto, you're serving at six mostly, right? Like you're looking to just put that ball in with a lot of pace. And Balasso is having to strap on some of the biggest servers in the game right now. So I think that's why we see his numbers maybe be down a little bit more. Whereas if you're a lesser, you know, strong server, you're going to go at Bottolo. But regardless, to me, as I said, I thought Lube really, really dictated the play of this match. A, because of their serving, and then B, just because of the pace of their offense, right? Their pace of their offense is so good, and then they're strong down the middle as well with Gargiulo and Woutahir. This is a really good team, right? I think that if Boniface can keep on playing this way, and that's not to say that he's not going to have up and down games, and same thing with other guys like Nikolov and Lepke and Bottolo as well too. This is a very, very good team, and it was really fun to watch them play. And yeah, I think it was a really good bounce back game. And on the other side of the net, it's really just a tough spot for Trento, right? Because they had to go to an 18-year-old Andrea Gianni, no relation to the other Andrea Gianni, because, you know, Jordi Ramon isn't passing the ball the way they need him to. And Gianni did come in and start that fourth set. He came in during the third to help solidify that serve receive just a little bit. Was all right offensively, but they're clearly not trying to give him the ball at all, but also really isn't present all that much on the block. So, you know, Trento just in not great position, being a little bit skinny on the left side as well. So this Trento team, I think, is going to struggle unless they can find some backup on the left side, which, I mean, is pretty much impossible at this time, unless you take someone in from China. But I don't know if there's any decent left sides who are going to be playing in China this year. And or if Jordi Ramon kind of steps up to the plate and starts passing that ball a little bit better. But I think it's going to be really interesting, their next matchup this weekend, because they're going to be taking on Verona. And as someone said in the chat, I do think that Verona is the second best serving team in the league, and we're going to touch on their match yesterday against Milano in just a little bit. But there's two things that, you know, Verona does similarly to Lube that might cause some problems for Trentino. Is one, they serve the shit out of the ball, right? They absolutely beat the ball. When you look at Mozic and Keita and Darlin or Sani, whoever they're using on the opposite, they used both yesterday. And they also run a really fast offense to the pins. So I did notice that, you know, Trento blocking, they start quite inside. And I mean, Lube and Verona are two teams who really prioritize that pipe ball. So I think it's going to have to be the same thing where, you know, you prioritize that first pipe ball and then go out, you know, push outside real quick to try to stop the third tempo ball. But I think this matchup is going to be very interesting for both teams as we move over from talking about this Lube versus Trentino matchup to the Verona versus Milano matchup. And, you know, technically Verona right now, if you look at the standings, are in first place with the full 9 points. They are technically in first place. Perugia is the other undefeated team, but they did go to 3 with Lube this past weekend. But Verona, when you look at the results, right, they went 3-1 against Piacenza, beat Grota 3-0, and then beat Milano 3-0. And if you watch my preview, you'll know that both Piacenza and Milano are in rebuilding phases. Both of them went and got younger teams, guys to build around, and Grota is Grota. I mean, I know we love TGE in the Discord, but the reality is that they don't have a roster to be able to run with the big, even playoff teams. Whereas Verona went out and really upgraded, and a lot of people view them as that fourth best and maybe a team that can really threaten. Now, I'm still not convinced. Once again, if you've watched my preview, I don't know if they made the proper moves for what could happen. And I think the first real big indication of that is going to be this upcoming weekend against Trentino. And that is going to be a match that I am going to watch really, really good, or really, really closely this weekend. And I'm really, really excited about it because once again, Verona absolutely dominated Milano. And now it took them a little bit a little bit of time to get going. But remember, Milano is missing two very important pieces of the puzzle. They're first and foremost, they're missing Cachopa. They've got a young rookie setter in Barbanti, Leonardo Barbanti, who's running that offense. And then you also don't have Sepe Rotti. So you have to start Otsuka and Ricine on the outside, and then you're really just hoping that Ferry Regers is going to have a really good match. And in this matchup, it was really, really tough because Verona serves the shit out of the ball. They had 5 aces in 3 sets on 25 with 25 errors in this match. And then now they did pass very well. However, Milano is a very conservative serving team, right? 2 aces to only 12 errors. Other than Regers and maybe Ricine, they don't really have guys who really go for it with their serve. And even Regers isn't a fantastic server by any stretch of the imagination. So, this was just an absolute mismatch. And so far, we've just seen Verona play teams who don't necessarily have the horses. But the way that they run their offense, I think, is a lot of fun. The way that both Keita and Mozic motion in the back row is a lot of fun to watch. I won't lie. And Christensen runs that offense really, really well. We did see Darlin Souza struggle early on, and then he was eventually subbed out for Francesco Sani, who played in the opposite. And I thought Sani did a really good job. He was 7 for 10. And was, once again, he brings a lot of heat from the baseline, as we saw at the World Championships. Darlin, yeah, I don't know. Just not really like 3 for 5. But got blocked twice. I don't really know why they went away from him. Maybe it was just to get a bigger block on the right side. But they brought in Sani pretty early and then just kind of kept him out there. So I think that's going to be something to be able to watch, because in theory, to me, you would think that Darlin would have a lot more shots open with the speed that they could run it to him. But it almost seems like they like running it a little bit higher on the opposite for Sani, and that's going to be something that we're going to have to continue to watch long term. But ultimately, this Verona team is arguably the most aggressive team in the league. Them and Lube for sure, with the way they run their offense. And, their ability to run it up the middle too with Cortesia and Marco Vitelli is really good, and it just opens up a lot of things. Now, I was really critical on Verona's roster construction in my preview, and the reality is that you're not going to convince me that this is a undeniably better team until we get to the playoffs, right? My mark for them is, can they win a first round playoff matchup? Can they win a quarterfinal matchup? Now, once again, I don't think that when you're looking at the other teams in the leagues, like the Milanos and the Piacenzas and the Modenas specifically, I think all 3 of those teams took a step backwards for rebuilding purposes, whereas Verona really tried to take a step forward by keeping their main guys, their main core, their 2 young stars, and bringing in, arguably some even better guys. But my biggest question for them is, will they be able to pass the ball against the better teams? And I think that is something that we're going to see in full force this weekend when they play Trentino. But overall, I think it's been pretty good so far for Verona, right? This is a team that a lot of people are expecting to do big things. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on them as you go. And Quantum, come on, you're smarter than that. With Micah setting, you don't need positive passing. Absolutely you do. Absolutely you do. Maybe not against Milano with the way that they are now. Milano isn't necessarily known as the best blocking team. However, there's still a very, like anytime you're going to be getting into a high ball situation, you have less of a chance to win. No doubt about it. And especially with how Verona plays with that pipe, they need to be able to play through the middle of the court, and you can't play with your pipe ball, and you can't even run your pipe ball if you're out of system, right? At that point, you're just jacking up, and it's not a bic, it's just a B ball if you want. It's just a high ball to the back row, which isn't fooling anyone. So maybe, Keita will take a nice little swing at that, but That's a very big maybe. So I still think that you're going to need positive reception. And once again, you may not need positive reception against a Milano. You may not need a positive reception against a Piacenza or, even a Modena. But when you're playing, like my like marker for Verona this season isn't beating those other guys. It's playing against Perugia, it's playing against Lube, and it's playing against Trentino. And we're going to see that first opportunity for them this upcoming weekend. Moving on, just a few other notes. Perugia 3-donged Padova. Don't really want to talk about it, but I do want to note Plotnitsky, 19 points, 10 aces. 10 aces. Now, talking about good serving teams, I think Perugia has to be number 3 in there. Plotnitsky is arguably a better server than he is attacker sometimes. Gianelli's got a good serve. Wasim Bentara has a good serve. Augustin Lozer has a good serve. Like, this is a team that serves well all around. I just don't think that they bring the same aggressive pressure that Lube does. That's a big no. And then also another big win in the relegation battle here with Cisterna taking down Grottazzolina in 5 sets. So just muddying the waters a little bit, but mostly I do want to shout out my guy right here, Landon Curry. 69% positive passing on 32 targets. And now I was messaging with Landon the other day because he also had, actually, where is it? Let's pull this up. I'm pretty sure he was like week number 1. It was a little difficult. First game in the Superliga. I had to play against Trentino, and maybe a little bit of nerves there. But where Cisterna, when they played and lost to Cuneo past weekend, I did see his stats. Yeah, once again on 15 targets, he was 73% positive. So 2 really, really good passing matches from my guy Landon Curry. You love to see it. And then also just creating a little bit of havoc there at the bottom of the table. Grottazzolina, TGE, still the only team, or not still, now the only team who are winless just 3 matches into this season. So we'll keep on watching that closely. And then looking forward to this weekend on Sunday. I don't think... Oh, there is one matchup on Saturday. Cuneo will be taking on Piacenza. But otherwise, Lube will be taking on Cisterna. Verona versus Trentino. That will be a big one to watch. That's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time for people here on in the Western Hemisphere. Milano against Monza. That will be a nice little derby there. Monza picked up their first win of the season this past week, already looking better than they did last year. So that will be a fun one, I think. Modena taking on Perugia. Modena also winning their first game of the year this past week against... No? Second win for Modena? What else have they done here? No, second win. They beat Monza, and then they beat Piacenza in a pretty good game this past weekend. So they'll be taking on Perugia. Another relegation battle between Padova and Grotta, and then, as we mentioned, Cuneo will be taking on Piacenza after that. So make sure you check out the Lega Volley this weekend. All right, moving on now to the PlusLiga, and there is just a few matches that I want to talk about, but I actually don't want to talk about the matches themselves. I mostly want to talk about the overreactions we've been seeing in the Discord, and it's time to overreact. It's time to overreact, even though we're only 2 weeks and 2 matches into this PlusLiga season. And mostly I want to overreact about the teams down here at the bottom of the standings. And now, Suwałki, sure, 0-2. They do play a little bit later today, I think. Do they play today? Yeah, they played today against Gdansk in just over an hour and a little bit. Hopefully, I'll be able to go watch that one live. But Zaksa starting the season 0-2. Gorzów starting the season 0-2. Częstochowa starting the season 0-2. And now, if you were a member and you watched my preview for the PlusLiga with Adnos, he thought that all 3 of these teams would be playoff teams, especially Zaksa and Częstochowa. Now I want to start with Zaksa. They did lose 3-1 to Zawiercie just the other day on Wednesday. Now, Zawiercie getting their first win of the year. nice good win. Krolek led the way with 20 points. Russell looking like he's heating up a little bit. He had 10, and then Matus Binek down the middle with 12. But I don't really want to talk about this match as it was altogether. We're going to be watching them, especially Zawiercie, a little bit closer as we go. But a lot of people are a little worried, let's say, about this Zaksa team. There was a lot of turnover from this team. And so far, it only looks like Kamil Rychlicki has been the guy. He's leading after 2 weeks, he's leading the PlusLiga in scoring. He's averaging over 5 points per match. And you know what? He already had another 25-point match in this one when, there's some people in the Discord saying that, maybe he doesn't have the support around him that he expected. Now, of course, there's a lot of turnover from the Zaksa team. Gone is Janusz, Shoji, Kurek, and then Poreba, who was their number one option down the middle as well. And one thing to note in this one is that Quinn Isaacson did appear to get injured early in this, or partway through the second set. He landed awkwardly on the pole, and it looks like he may have tweaked his knee. And this was... It was really good to see he did come back in off the bench briefly in both the third and the fourth to play a little back row ball. So we'll monitor that a little bit. We know that Isaacson went out last year with a thumb injury, and I think it's tough if you start your career by just getting a few injuries. It might put you on a bad path, and I really like watching Isaacson set, so we're going to watch that out for him. But a lot of people are kind of harping on the fact that maybe Rychlicki isn't getting that much help from Igor Grabelny and Rafael Shimura. Mostly now, Shimura did not have a fantastic match, going 3 for 9 with only 11% efficiency, and then they ended up bringing in Jakub Szymanski to play in his place instead. Grabelny, 9 for 17. He was all right as well with a 47% efficiency, but they're just saying that maybe this team doesn't have the same juice that they sorry. I was playing with knobs there and made things really, really loud. Maybe that he just didn't have the same juice. And to be honest, I think this is a little bit of an overreaction when it comes to Zaksa, because their 2 matches this year have been against Lublin, who they pushed to 5, and then Zawiercie, right? The 2 teams from the finals last year. They have gone through a lot of turnover. Isaacson did have to go sit on the bench. So, and when you look at the numbers as well, other than Shimura in this past game, they're pretty similar, right? And that was the same way that this Zaksa team ran last year, where they were very right side dominant, and then everyone kind of played off of that. However, I do think that this kind of shows just how important Shoji and Janusz were, especially. I thought Janusz was absolutely in his bag last year, just because he really kept that efficiency very high. I think they were third for efficiency in the PlusLiga. They're definitely one of the better teams, or maybe even second for efficiency in the PlusLiga. Just by the way that Janusz spread that ball around, but still gave so much volume to Kurek once he came by. And once again, like, Zaksa was able to get wins earlier on in the season. Like, I don't think Kurek came back until about 7 or 8, maybe even 10 matches into the year, and they had Matus Rechko on the right side, and they were still getting wins throughout that time. So I think for Zaksa fans, it's just a matter of kind of waiting out and seeing how things go. If they start losing to non-playoff teams, then it's going to be an issue. And if the stats really start showing different from what we saw last year, then it might be an issue. But I think Monday's match against Skra is going to be a really good indication of actually how good this Zaksa team really is. But the other team that I really want to talk about is Częstochowa. And I think that's a very different story, right? For a few reasons. Częstochowa went out and they didn't lose that many guys, pretty much just Quinn Isaacson. And they went out and maybe even improved themselves by picking up Luciano De Cecco. And, I know that De Cecco maybe is a little bit older, but he's still Luciano De Cecco. He's still one of the absolute greats. But when you look at how this team is 0-2, I think that's where it causes some worries. First and foremost, they were dominated by Lublin in that first match. They were 3-donged. One of the sets was 25 or 28-26, but then the other 2 were like 16 and 15. So it was just an absolute domination. And then they go, and then earlier this week, I think it was Tuesday, lose a tight 5-setter to Lviv, who were literally on the doorstep of relegation this past last season. Now, I do think you have to give some credit to Lviv in a few areas. First and foremost, Lorenzo Pope, I thought, was outstanding this one. We've been waiting for him for a little bit to come and be a starter. He spent some time with Modena, then got injured, kind of took a year off, played in the Australian League, or if you want to call it that. But this one was a fantastic match. 21 for 36. He had 25 points, led the team. He ended up being the MVP of this match with a 47% efficiency. But the real guy who I thought should have been the MVP of this match for Lviv was Yamato Nakano. Nakano, the Japanese setter, came in the second set, and now Lviv had a 27% efficiency through sets 1 and 2, right? And then they ended the match with a 44% efficiency, right? They had a 52% efficiency in the third. They had a 48% efficiency in the fourth, and then a 75% efficiency in the fifth. They went 12 for 16. 12 for 16 in the fifth set is absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? Maybe that's kind of where you can give a little bit of you can let Norvid off the hook a little bit, but Lviv went out there and made 7 digs in that fifth set and went 12 for 16 offensively, and their reception, terrible. Only 20% positive, 0% perfect in that fifth set on 10 targets. So, there was some shots of DeCecco really looking dejected, and I can kind of understand why, right? Because I think right now the big issues for this Częstochowa team has to be on the outside, right? Looking at Bartolomew Lipinski and then Milad Abadapur. Now, Abadapur, I don't think was terrible. 14 for 26 with a 38% efficiency. I don't think that's super bad. But Lipinski really, really struggled. He was 4 for 12 with a 0% efficiency. And now, so far this season, both of these guys have been down in terms of their efficiency. Abadapur was hitting 51% with a 36% efficiency last season. He's down to 48% and a 25% efficiency in the first 2 matches of the year. And Lipinski's even worse. He was hitting a 43 with a 31% efficiency last year, now down to 35 and a 4% efficiency. And now both of their uses has gone down a little bit. Abadapur's got 40 or 24% of the sets last year. Now he's down to 22, whereas Lipinski went from 21% of the offense to now just 11. And it's really not a good look when 18-year-old, Jakub Kiros has to come in and does a better job than Lipinski. And, I'm not entirely sure if this is because of DeCecco thing. We know how DeCecco runs that offense, and maybe it's a little bit more difficult. But when you look at it, like Indra's numbers are up. Indra was swinging 52% last year with a 48, with a 43% efficiency, and this year he's a 53% with 48% efficiency. So I don't really know there, but I do think that Norvid is going to have to figure something out, because it also doesn't get easier for them. They have Zawiercie in this next match. And yeah, overall, I just think it's going to be a little bit difficult for this Norvid team. I think they were a little bit of, I don't want to call them a flash in the pan. I really don't want to say that, because I believe in this team, but I really would have liked them to see them go get a little bit of support on the left side and bring in a little bit more beefiness on the left side just to support some things. Because, 44% efficiency as a team isn't terrible. DeCecco doing really good with the middles with Jakub Novak and Sebastian Adamczyk. But still, Indra 25 for 41 with a 48% efficiency is not that bad, but they're really, really struggling on the left side is Norvid. And I don't know if they're going to have an answer for that. So we'll have to watch them. And I think, they take on, when are they going to be playing Zawiercie? I think that's Saturday in the primetime match. Yeah, it's the 8:30 p.m. slot on Saturday. They will be playing it's going to be a big match for Norvid. Not just I don't think it necessarily means that they have to get a win, but I just need to see some fight from them to see if they can recreate what they did last season. The other team to note here who is winless is Gorjuv. And I mean, Gorjuv brought back Chizoba, who was an absolute scoring machine for them last year, and he has struggled, only 20% efficiency in this match. And then also Matisse Heno, 9 for 23 with a 21% efficiency. So Gorjuv, honestly, I haven't done any video or really watched any of their matches, but maybe I'll hunker down and watch this PlusLiga Saturday upcoming, because those are three teams that, when I did my preview with Adnos thought all three of them could be in the playoff picture. And, I wasn't too high on the Skra team, but it looks like they did a not too bad job in this one. Daniel Kichigoy, 15 points. Decent. Not too bad. Well, I'll have to check them out in the future, because I honestly did not watch this match. I think it was yesterday. So, looking forward to this weekend. I mean, today we'll have Gdansk against Suwałki. If you're a bettor, go check out those spreads, because I don't know how people aren't favoring Gdansk in this one. Tomorrow actually should be a bit of a fun day. JW takes on Warszawa, which is a battle of two top teams. JW still undefeated? Yeah, JW still undefeated so far this season. So let's see how they can stand up against Warszawa, one of the top teams in the league. Also have Varsovia taking on Gorjuv, and in the primetime match, Zawiercie taking on Norvid. And then on Sunday, we got a couple. Well, Lublin takes on Helm. I'm expecting a 3-dong on that one. And then Zaksa takes on... there's only one match on Sunday. Cool. Interesting. And then Zaksa will be taking on Skra on Monday, with Lviv taking on Olsztyn. So some fun matches all around to be able to check out this past weekend. And I know that JW almost lost to Olsztyn. I thought that JW should have lost to Olsztyn. I thought, like, if Olsztyn had made the change to Arthur Schwartz permanent and not kept trying to go with Hadrava, I think that they would have won. And y'all are thinking that Modena looks a lot different this year than they did last year. I don't necessarily disagree. I still think that Tiziwalu has a long way to go. But I don't disagree the fact that his attitude does kind of ruin some things sometimes. And that's kind of what it felt like in the match against Lviv. And there was an interesting picture after the match of Nakano and DeCecco. Nakano clearly wanted to get a picture with a legend, and DeCecco looked pretty dejected. He looked pretty dejected throughout that match. And it's going to be interesting to see how he can keep his attitude positive. It's some similar thing to what we saw with Monza last year, and how Cachopa was really getting down. And maybe that's just a South American thing. Like, I know that Brazilians especially are very intense, and I'm sure that Argentinians are very much the same thing too. They wear their heart on their sleeve, and they're able to get after each other a little bit like that. Whereas maybe in Europe, they're a little bit nicer to each other. But we'll have to keep an eye on Norvid, because, that's a team that a lot of people are expecting to do some big things. Absolutely. All right, next up, I want to head over to the Bundesliga real quick, because the Bundesliga has been very interesting to start this year. Has been very, very interesting to start this year. Let's just say, now I think Düren might be one of the best teams in the league. They beat Berlin this past weekend. Berlin did finally pick up their first win of the season. They're now 1-2. And then they followed that up with a really nice win over Friedrichshafen this week as well. And, Düren, I think, is looking really, really good. Let's see, where did I put those stats here? I did have to, I basically make a tab, or, a window with all of my different tabs that I'm going to talk about. And I closed the tab literally as I posted the link in the Discord today, so I had to rush to bring everything back in. But Duren looking really, really good early on in this season. You know what? And I love to see it because Duren is basically a little U Sports team. Jordan Canham, my guy, Navan, Ontario, out there leading this team. And not only this team, he's also one of the top scorers in the league right now. Top scorers. He is the third top scorer in the league, averaging 4.8 points per set with 56 points. And you know what? He is really leading that team so far. You do feel for Friedrichshafen. I mean, they are not the same team in the same club that we saw them be, over the last little while, or the past few years. They lost their gym a few years ago, and then it just seemed like a bit of financial turmoil where it kind of went downhill. And of course, earlier on in the season, they did lose one of their starters in Jackson Young to Lublin. So had a great first couple of matches for Lublin. So this team, not necessarily at the same level as we were expecting, but Kyle Hobus, who's been pretty good, wasn't as good in this one. He was 6 for 14. They ended up pulling him out and bringing in Parker Van Buren, who was fantastic coming in off the bench in that last set for 7 for 13. Also shout out to Jonas Van Heusen, formerly of Fraser Valley University here in U Sports. He had started the year in his first year pro in the Czech League, but then Young moving to the PlusLiga, he was just brought in, and he was brought in off the bench, ended up going 6 for 12 in attacking. So we'll keep watching him there. But yeah, this Duren team is a lot of fun to watch. I think they're really solid. They've got Canham on the right side, Robin Baghdadi, who is another U Sports guy who used to play for Brandon. He's been super efficient this year. They have Ryan Poole, who's Irish, I believe, also played for Long Beach back in the days with, TJ DeFalco and Tuaniga. He helped them win a couple of NCAA championships. And then they also have Petteri Tenisma down the middle. So Duren, 4-0 to start the season with 2 big wins over Berlin and Friedrichshafen to start the season. So you love to see it. And then I also talked about him or maybe it was last episode or the episode before, but Nahiro Omene out of Princeton, I believe, just really dominating. He's averaging 7.6 points per set for Ludwigsburg. And there's a lot of newer teams in the Bundesliga this year, as we've seen some teams fold and some teams move and stuff like that. But Omene absolutely dominating early. 81 points in just 3 matches is huge. I did mention that Berlin did get their first win of the season. Haynes was much, much better. He was 5 for 9 in attacking, but also had 7 aces in this match against Warnemünde. Let's see, anyone to talk about on the Warnemünde side of things? No, not really. But we'll definitely have to keep our eye on the Bundesliga this season and what they've been able to do. Yeah, Bundesliga has a lot more teams this season. Now they've lost some teams who were really good in the past years. The United Volleys, were they Frankfurt? I think it was. There's the Alpen Volleys that were playing out of Austria too, that were really good. Rotterdam used to have a really good team. Bull used to have a really good team. And now the Bundesliga is just a very, very different landscape, in my opinion. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so many more teams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 teams. 14 teams is quite a bit here for the Bundesliga. And to me, I think only like Lüneburg obviously is going to be at the top there. They're still undefeated. Actually, let's see. What is going to be the upcoming matches here for the Bundesliga? There's the schedule. Lundberg is going to be taking on Kershing. Gießen is going to be taking on Berlin. Gießen is also another undefeated team, so that should be pretty interesting this week coming up. Yeah, that's it. That's all I'm gonna have to talk about the Bundesliga. I do think that if you go to the Discord, I know, shout out to Yana, who posted when the free matches on Twitch are going to be. Berlin against Düren, I think it's going to be. Let me see. Berlin against Lundberg on November 11th, and then Düren against Lundberg on November 21st. So those will be 2 matches to watch for free on Twitch over on Bounce House if you want to watch the Bundesliga and you don't want to pay for DIN. All right, moving on now from the... Oh, actually, just want to touch on real quick. Nihero? Somebody from Princeton or in those arounds are going to have to tell me. He was 17 for 23 this past weekend. Did get blocked 3 times, but man, oh man, this man knows how to score. Are we getting a Bundesliga channel in the Discord? Do we need a Bundesliga channel in the Discord? Y'all tell me. Okay, now moving on from the Bundesliga to the French League. And now this is why I think I want to do these a little bit more often, because it gives me an opportunity to touch on the lesser leagues. I don't have a million matches to cover from Italy and Poland and stuff like that. But honestly, I don't really watch the French League. You have to pay for their streams, and I just don't really want to. So if someone wants to give me a free stream, like if someone from the LNV is listening to this and wants to give me a free stream so I can talk about your teams a little bit more, that would be great. Now, there is... Love to see that Tours and Montpellier, the 2 Champions League teams, are at the top. Tours did have a bit of a scare yesterday, going 3-2 against Poitiers. Shout out to Dan Lewis, who's leading Poitiers out there. Montpellier as well is a really, really good team with Nick Mujanovic, I believe, is on Poitiers. But for me, I mostly want to talk about Chaumont, because Chaumont is a team who is always on the podium in the French League. I mean, they've won it. They've got second. The last time they finished out of the top 3 was back in 2015, 2016 when they got 5th. This is a team that is perennially in Champions League and in CEV Cup and a bunch of things. Now, last year they had a really, really good team. And this year might be really the downfall of Chaumont. Now, listen to who they had last year. Joe Worsley, who was the MVP of the league. Matisse Henno. Nico Sukkanen of Finland, obviously. Shane Holdaway and Lucas Massa down the middle, and Sebastian Kloster as their libero. And now all of those guys are gone. The only 2 guys that they have returning are Jacob Pasteur, formerly of Ohio State, and Pierre Toledo. And both of those guys have really struggled. But, you know, this team went from being one of the best teams in the league, and now they have a really young roster. The majority of this team is under the age of 25. And they also have had a lot of injuries. Alexandros Raptis, the Greek outside, still hasn't played. And then down the middle as well, Jackson Meyer wasn't on the roster against Set after their match against Ajaccio in their second match of the season. And then it looks like their other opposite, or their other middle, Sarema out of Estonia, was injured too. They had to start their second opposite, Joshua Marty. With a name like Joshua Marty, you'd expect him to be maybe American, but actually he's French. And they have moved him. They had to move him down the middle. They brought in Sarema for a hot second in the second set, but then brought him out quickly and went back to Marty. And now Chaumont has started this season 1-9 for sets. 0-3, and it's really been difficult. I know they brought in Brett Walsh to be their setter, and it really just looks like he doesn't have that many options for him. Like, their reception isn't that good, but then the 2 guys that you're really expecting to be able to lean on, especially with Raptis being injured, are the 2 guys who are coming back, and both of them have struggled. Pierre Toledo, the opposite, has gone 21 for 65 this season. He's sitting at 32% with a 10% efficiency. And Jacob Pasteur, who is a guy that I've really vouched for over the past little bit. I got to see him play for the B team in 2022 for the American B team, and I thought that, he has an elite level shoulder and has an elite level pace. He's also not been doing great. He's 30 for 83 overall, hitting a 36% with an 8% efficiency. So really, really sucks to see this Chaumont team struggle like this. And I'm being told that there's a spam bot in the Discord. So I'm live right now, so I'll have to come deal with that a little bit later once we're done with this. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on Chaumont because this should be a very, very good team. But otherwise, Tours, Montpellier, both of whom are undefeated. Tours just almost lost to Poitiers, but it managed to pull it out. Montpellier will be having a nice little matchup against Plessis-Robinson, and Plessis-Robinson so far is 2-1, and by all accounts, big shout out to our guy Max Elgert, who has gone in and really helped turn some things around there for Plessis-Robinson. Caen will also be taking on Chaumont. Caen is the home of Xander Kaczynski this year. Sète will be taking on Tourcoing. Sète is the home of Gage Worsley this year. Paris against Ajaccio, and then Narbonne against Nice. So all of those matches can be checked out on lnv.tv, which unfortunately you do have to pay for. All right. That is it for my touches. Oh, actually, no. You know what? Real quick, we will touch in on what happened in the day 6 of the Lega Volley Femminile. Now, I did not watch any of these matches, so I'm not going to break them down at all. I'm not even really going to give you any stats, but it was kind of no real upsets from what I've seen so far this year. Scandici won 3-1 against Busto. That could have been a good one, but it looks like Scandici was the better team. Let's see how they did. And I know I said I wasn't going to look numbers, but I'm just a little curious on to who's scoring for Scandici. Avery Skinner didn't even play. They went with Sarah Franklin, who had 16. That's not too bad. Antropova had 21. Camilla Weitzel had 16. And then Melanie Para had 10, and Abosa had 14 for Scandici. Novara wins 3-1 against Monviso. Conegliano wins 3-1 against Chieri, and they went with Silla and Dalderop on the left side. Had let Gabby have the night off. Cuneo was able to save things against Firenze. They were down even in the 5th. Now this Cuneo team has been up and down. They 3-donged Scandici, and then they lost last week. Now they're going to 5 with Firenze. No idea what to tell about this Cuneo team. And another interesting one, Valafolia clutched it out against Bergamo, and Bergamo really struggled. I know they made the playoffs last year. They were in 8th, but Cisse, just not the same player as she was last year, not scoring the same way, and Kendall Kipp struggled a little bit in this one as well. Milano got a 3-0 win over Perugia, and then Macerata 3-donged the still winless Consolini. So that is just your update on the Lega Volley Femminile. Let's see what they have on the schedule. Oh, no, let's go for just Serie A. Bergamo is going to be taking on Conegliano on Saturday, so I'm sure that their struggles are going to continue. Monviso will be taking on Milano. Actually, that is actually going to be a really interesting matchup, as we have Novara taking on Scandici on Saturday. So, and that one's going to be an early one too, 4 p.m. their time. So I think that's like 10 a.m. here in the Eastern. So I'm going to wake up on Sunday and watch a little Novara against Scandici. That should be good. Busto taking on Macerata should be an easy win for them. Valfolia against Chieri could be interesting, although I do think Chieri is better than Valfolia. Perugia taking on Firenze, and then maybe Cuneo can get their momentum going in against Consolini again this season. All right. As we wrap things up here, there is one thing left to talk about, and that is Brazil to host the men's and women's FIVB Volleyball World Club Championships. Once again, can't even remember the last time they weren't hosted in Brazil. Is like the Club World Championships just the new World Cup? Just instead of just gifting things to Japan, you're just going to gift it to Brazil. Now, there's a debate every year on if this tournament is even worth watching. And I don't really know. I'll be honest. I don't really know if this tournament is worth watching sometimes. We'll go over some of the teams participating. First and foremost with the women's teams. We have 7 of the 8 teams announced. So you're going to have Conegliano and you're going to have Scandici. Dantel Praia Clube out of Brazil, who is currently 2-0 to start their season. And they've got players like Macris, who sets this team, Peyton Caffrey out of the U.S. As well on this team, Carol Gattas down the middle. So they're not too bad team to watch. Can they really stand up against Scandici and Conegliano? Maybe if they're jet lagged, which they probably will be. And then you have the team that won the Brazilian Super Cup this year, who is also the host team, Osakos Volleyball Clube. They're going to be set by Jenna Gray. They also have Bianca Cunho, the Argentinian, who had a really good World Championships this year. And that's kind of all I can... Yeah, that's the only players I really recognize on this Osaka roster. So to me, it's really just going to be a Conegliano against Scandici matchup. So I don't think, like last year, you had way more intrigue in this tournament. I don't think you have nearly as much. I mean, you've got a team from Peru, which, yeah, sure, let's just gift 3 teams to the... I guess it's 2 teams to South America, 2 teams to Asia. Yeah. No. Yeah, 2 teams to... Well, 1 team to Asia, 1 team to Africa. As you've got a team from Kazakhstan and a team from Egypt, whatever. And then there is an open spot. And now I don't necessarily know if that open spot is going to another team from Asia, or could it possibly going to an American team? Are we going to see like a League One or a MLV/former PVF team step in and go to the Club World Championships? Honestly, I think we would have so much more intrigue if we started involving the American leagues. Now, I know we're only, 2 seasons in for the MLV, 1 year in for League One, but let's get them in there. Let's get them going. It's just... I don't think it's just that. I just don't think that this tournament is that interesting, right? And you're forcing teams to fly across the world, really, to be able to play it. So I just wish, like, it's just the reality of it, especially in women's volleyball. All of the best teams are in one place, and then the AVC Champions League is an absolute joke. Like, the Japanese teams generally don't even play it. And when they do, like when we'll talk about the men's side, like the 2 teams from the men's teams are Al Rayyan from Qatar, because they picked up a boatload of players last year, including Namori Keita. And I don't understand, like it just proves how unprofessional volleyball is when for your Club World Championships, for the qualifier for that, you can pull in players and just pay them a boatload of money who did not play for your team in that season, who did not play one regular season match, who did not play one playoff match. In other leagues around the world, if you don't, like, generally, if you're not on the roster, like, you can't be added. Like, we always clown the LNV because they allow these second-tier teams, not second-tier teams, sorry. I take that back. I don't know what I was saying there. But in the LNV, they allow, like, a medical substitution, and you can bring in someone, and we've seen them bring in some studs over the past years. But I absolutely hate how you can play these teams in Qatar, can play all year long, and then go to the AVC Championships and just sign all of the best players who aren't in any playoffs anymore. So for the men's side, which I honestly think will be a little bit more interesting, even though we've got 3 teams out of Brazil there, which is like, I know you get the host team and then 2 teams from South America, because North America doesn't have a Champions League, and it would be bad anyways. But Perugia, Zavierci, Santa Cruzero, Praia Clube, Al Rayyan, who we talked about earlier, unfortunately, they're going to be missing one of their best players for this season, so they're going to be even worse than expected. Osaka Blution and Sueli Sports Club out of Libya, and then also Valle Renata. So I think, maybe one of the, like we did see Sada Cruzeiro win it last year. And I do think that that's partly just because of the jet lag from all those teams flying over. It's a last minute thing. Perugia should win this tournament easily. Like, I don't think Zavierci is nearly the team that they were last year, even though they kept the majority of their roster. And yeah, I think this might be a little bit more interesting with Sada Cruzeiro and with Valle Renata there and with Blution there. But, if Al Rayyan hadn't had all those teams, it would have been Blution and Suntory. And I think like Blution is pretty good. They have Brizard and they have Yuji Nishida and they have Miguel Lopez. So that's a pretty good team. And Suntory is the same thing where they have Igor Kliuka and they have Mazursky and they have Sakita. And a number Ran as well. So I would have loved to see that. Like with the growth of Japanese volleyball right now and the growth of the SV League, especially on the men's side, I think that like Volleyball World needs to step in and make some actual rules about this. Make some actual rules. And I know that, they're getting a tighter and tighter relationship with Qatar and the Middle East. There's that whole debacle that's going on with the Italian Super Cup, which should be a preseason tournament, is now potentially going to be held in Saudi Arabia, like over Christmas. And like Perugia has been posting about it. Like the same thing, like Gianelli has been posting about it. Kalachi has been posting about it because they're going to have to come from Brazil, fly through Christmas to Saudi Arabia to play the Super Cup, which should have been a preseason tournament, right? And this preseason tournament is all getting paused for the Islamic Games that are going on literally right now and just about to start. And I know all of our Turkish fans in the Discord are really upset about it because they've paused the Efler Ligi and the Sultanlar Ligi for 3 weeks so that the Turkish national teams or their B teams basically are going to play against Afghanistan. Like it's just absolutely so weird how we're capitulating to these things. And I mean, I think that's a bigger conversation altogether in politics. But I do think that the mix of teams is a little bit more interesting. Like, do remember that Foulad out of Iran like beat Lube twice last year and ended up winning third. So we can have some quality coming out there. And like looking at like Uberlandia is an all right club. I mean, they've got like Lucas Lowe. Okay, whatever. Sada Cruzeiro, of course, is Sada Cruzeiro. They have Douglas Souza and Wallace. Matus is setting for this team. Lucas Satkamp is still out there playing. And then Valle Renata is like Bruno Rezende, Bruno Lima, Mauricio Borges as well. So I do think that there's going to be some quality within the Brazilian teams, and then you'll have Perugia and Zavierci and Blution as well. So there is a little bit more, I think, to watch on the men's side than there is the women's side, where it's ultimately just, in my opinion, it's ultimately just going to come down to Conegliano against Scandici. But that's my opinion. You guys let me know in the chat what you guys think. I really hope we can get it back in Italy. Oh, so it was already announced that it was supposed to be done in Saudi, and they're terrible at organizing, and so they couldn't get it done on the correct date. I don't know why. Truthfully, I don't know why they're trying to sell off that event. That's just silly. If you want to have another like preseason event in Saudi Arabia, then do it. Obviously, it was basically impossible this year, but I don't understand. Like, is Saudi? I mean, I guess they must be paying the Lega Volley. They must be paying the Lega Volley enough money to justify A, not having box office, and B, probably not having TV rights. Like, are TV companies even going to be interested in streaming this? I don't really know. I think it's a mess all around. Apparently, the Saudi League is fighting with whoever was supposed to organize the actual tournament. Yeah, Yeah, that sounds about right. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you all tuning in. Let me know how you feel about kind of doing 2 episodes a week. I kind of like it better. This was, half the time that it took me to do the other episodes, and I can kind of dive in to some of the bigger stories a little bit more. But appreciate you all. I might not be going live on Monday. We'll have to see how things go. I have a meeting on Monday evening with someone that you all know and love, and going to be meeting them for a beer or 8 on Monday. So if I can get a show in like early afternoon Toronto time, I will. If not, I'll probably be going live early on Tuesday morning, early afternoon, or like Tuesday morning or early afternoon. One of the two. Okay. Appreciate you all. Have a happy and safe Halloween. Go Jays, go. Going to go clinch the World Series tonight because Shohei Ohtani can't get a hit. And yeah, I'm stoked. Have a great weekend, all. Love you. Bye.